Welcome to the London Property Podcast, your go-to source for navigating the complex and ever-changing London real estate market. Our digital marketplace provides informative and educational content from industry leaders through podcasts and videos. We cover various aspects of the real estate experience, including buying and selling, finance, law, tax, construction, design, and more. Join us as we delve into the latest trends and developments in the market and gain valuable insights from our panel of experts.
Hello and welcome to London Property, the home of super prime. I'm your host Farnaz Fazaipour, and today we're welcoming George Sita back to the show for a third time to share some insight with us. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks very much, Farnaz.
Can you please, for our listeners who may have missed our previous episodes about private client construction and also the second one we did about second home versus principal homes, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to here today and gathered all this experience in insurance?
Sure. So I've been involved in the private client insurance sector for over 20 years. Initially as part of the team at Stackhouse Poland for 15 of those years. I then helped SPF private clients run their insurance relationship with Savills, and I've been one of the founding partners of Vision since they launched in 2017.
Thank you very much for that. So here at London Property, we have clients in the super prime locations in London. A lot of these clients have international presence. They've got properties all over the world, substantial properties all over the world.
Yeah.
And as we all know, getting things under one umbrella can be a lot more efficient and also a lot more cost effective. So with that in mind, talking about global clients with assets all over the world, what are the points that you would advise people to think about?
Yeah, and I think you've mentioned a couple of the key parts there already. This area of global insurance for clients that are fortunate enough to have properties in more than one location, it is probably the most overlooked area of any of the insurances that we cover. And traditionally, that's because a lot of the small print and a lot of the insurance restrictions tend to get in the way of what would otherwise be common sense. If you're a client and you've got multiple homes, why wouldn't you choose to have one insurer covering all of your risk? Not only would you get a better deal in that situation, but also it eliminates any potential gaps in coverage. If you've got different advisors and different insurers in different jurisdictions around the world, just because that's the way that it's always been done, then there's always a chance that one insurer or one broker in one particular country will assume that someone else in a different country is picking up a part of the client's overall global risk. And then you only find out when there's a claim that isn't the case. And then everyone is suitably embarrassed that nobody thought to mention it to the client. So I think it's an overlooked area that needs far more consideration. It is absolutely possible for a client with multiple properties to insure them all under a single policy. Quite often, what you need to run alongside that is a local broker to provide the advice that goes alongside the placement of that policy. So what we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years is making sure that we've got established partner broker connections in a lot of the main jurisdictions, so that alongside organising a single policy for a client, we can back that up by providing local advice from a broker as well.
Brilliant. And I like what you said, because actually in a lot of things to do with property, common sense should drive you, because if something makes sense when you think about it, then there almost always is a solution for it. And I think people don't take their own gut instincts as seriously as they should. It's like, okay, well, I've got 5 houses. Why am I not going to the same guy for these insurance? People should ask themselves that question. I
think you're right, but I think quite often we get caught up in things being done a certain way because that's just how they've always been done. And it's one of my sort of biggest frustrations, as you say, that common sense doesn't come into it in a bit more detail. Increasingly as well in that sector, you're having to deal with family offices on behalf of the client, And where you're dealing with those family offices or indeed trust companies that are based in Jersey or Guernsey or Cayman or wherever, those trustees have a responsibility to make sure that the client's assets are properly protected. So having someone like me to provide oversight on those global risks is important. Now, obviously, I'm not going to understand all of the intricate details of, let's say, the insurance market in the US, but that's why we would choose to partner with a US broker in these situations, so that we can provide the best of both worlds. We can understand the complexities of the local market, but still be providing the global solution at the same time.
Now, you touched on all the key words: Cayman, Jersey, Guernsey. So let's talk about KYC. So does KYC play a big part in insurance as well?
Increasingly so. If you go back 10 or 15 years, you'd be able to get a quote from an insurer without actually divulging who the client is. You can't do that anymore. So any quote that we want to get on behalf of a client, even if the property is owned by a limited company or trust, we still have to divulge who the ultimate beneficial owner of the trust is, so that the insurers can understand that element of the risk. It's become even more relevant from a sanctions perspective, particularly with what's been going on in Ukraine in recent years. Insurers are very nervous around any clients with a Russian origin, and in some ways it's whilst I can understand it, it also means that a lot of really good business has been caught up in this situation, because from a sanctioned client perspective, it's pretty much impossible to get cover in the UK. But there's a lot of clients who haven't been sanctioned, whose risk profile hasn't changed, but just because they're Russian, it's made the process of them getting insurance far more difficult.
And there's another reason where common sense isn't being used, right? Because people, you can't say an entire nation is at fault, and they can't get what they need to just live their day-to-day lives. So that must have been quite a challenge to deal with. So what happens to people who are uninsurable?
It's a very good point. We had a situation with our largest client last year where he's insured with the same insurer for 15 years, paying on average $450,000 a year for his insurance, so huge amount of money. Claims record is good, no adverse risk profile, but because he's a high-profile Russian businessman, his insurers decided not to offer renewal. So, in that scenario, we had to start from scratch and try and find a new insurer for a global portfolio, including US property, European property, London property, cars, boats, planes, you name it. And it was a very difficult placement. We were able to do it. But I think quite often you've got to be persistent in that market. All of the main composite insurers in the UK, the names that will be very familiar to some of your listeners, have pretty much pulled out of writing any Russian client as new business. So you're having to look for more unusual solutions to come up with something that allows the clients to continue to be insured. And it's important because quite often with these clients, we saw another Russian client where he had a very significant property in North London with a very expensive loan set against the property. It's a requirement of the loan that the property is insured, yet he can't get insurance. So, not only is that a problem in itself, but he's also breaching the terms of his mortgage at the same time. So, it's a very complex area.
It is a complex area, and then that man's going to find himself in a situation where the loan is being pulled and there's no insurance, and he's probably at no fault.
Yeah, and it's crazy because for years, it's been a very attractive part of the market. You will have insurers competing to win business, from each other in this sector, and now, you've almost got as you said before, a whole population that are finding it very difficult to get cover.
Let's hope that common sense brings solutions that bring a lot more transparency and people can actually, only be punished if they should be punished. Thank you very much for talking to us, and for our listeners who have complex requirements, they now know exactly where to go. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Farners.
Thanks for tuning in to our latest episode of the London Property Podcast. Head over to our website where you can browse our exclusive network of top experts driving the market. As a member, you'll have direct access to our experts and their networks. Our award-winning content will help you choose the right professionals for your needs and make informed decisions about your investments. Personal recommendations are a powerful tool in connecting with trusted professionals. Let us introduce you to the right people to help you achieve your real estate goals. Contact us now to learn more about becoming a member and gaining access to these valuable resources, or joining our directory of experts.